Airline pilot story one, it's a lifestyle. It's not your typical 9 to 5, Monday through Friday job. As you move out through your career, you'll start flying different routes, different places, different hours. You'll work weekends, you'll work nights, you'll work days. You have the ability to bid for your job every month. So every month you can go in and you can decide, where do I want to work tomorrow? What hours do I want to work tomorrow? So there's a big lifestyle component to the job that's very appealing.
Why would you want to fly, though, in an airline? And it's kind of a stupid question for me to ask this, but I know that some people are going to wonder this.
Flying an airline versus what other options? I mean, there are other options besides the airline. You can fly corporate, you can fly flight training, but again, it's a well-paid career, it's a professional career. There's a lot of responsibility. It's like being a doctor, it's like being a lawyer. You have to go to school, you have to learn, and it's a well-respected industry.
What about the actual enjoyment of flying something like one of these?
Imagine getting in and you've got a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that you've been handed the keys to. I mean, just from that, I mean, think of the pride and joy you have. You've got 100, 200, 300 people behind you that are relying on you to take you from A to B. And then you throttle up that engine and go running down that runway. I mean, that is just an amazing feeling, and you're the one doing it every day for your job.
That's got to be a huge amount of responsibility, because people on the show have seen me fly PA-28s and Cessnas and stuff like that. Now, I'm a private pilot, but that's got to be a real step up.
It's huge. It's a thrill. And when you get into an aircraft like that and you feel the thrust and the power, it's truly amazing. What you got to remember, though, is it's a job, and it's stressful like any other job. But at the end of the day, what's your job? You fly airplanes. It's fun. It's passionate. You're up in the sky. You're up in the clouds. I mean, it's something that almost nobody does. People love to travel because they love to get in an airplane. They think it's a neat experience. Think about, you do that every day from the cockpit with the full view.
Now, we're talking to a lot of flight training schools here. Obviously, that's your first step, getting yourself up to the point where you've got the qualifications to do it. What generally happens when you go to an airline like Delta? What's the kind of first day once you've got a job with Delta, and what's the progression after that?
Sure. The progress is you go to a flight training camp such as Delta Connection Academy or one of these other ones. You get all your ratings, you build your hours. And hours building is when you get hired by an airline, they want to make sure you have so much experience. So typically they have a qualification you have to meet. Once you meet that qualification, you go into an interview. And it's a screening process, and they look at your curriculum that you've done, they look at your scores, you look at your marks, they see how you present yourself, because you're the face of that company when you get hired. So it's very visible position. So they want to make sure you can present yourself in front of them. You get hired, you go into a first officer training. Now you're learning what the airline and how their processes and procedures work. They'll get you a type rating and the specific equipment you're going to fly, whether it's 737, 757, an Airbus, and they'll type you for that. And then you get in the right seat and you start flying legs, and you build your hours and you build your seniority.
Just finally, for anyone that's thought about maybe going for flight training, quite likes the idea of doing an airline, perhaps has flown flight simulators for many years at home on their computer, and they just need that little push to make them go for this because they could do it, what would you say?
If you have the dream and you have the passion and you're thinking about it, I mean, the one is just go for it. There's big ideas, there's big things you can do in your life. The longer you actually think and wait, the harder it is. It's just like anything. You really have to make the phone call, find who the flight schools around you are, get the information, line everything up, and jump in and do it. Waiting is not going to make it any easier.
Yeah, so could you just explain really what is the difference between modular and integrated?
Well, modular really gives you a bit more flexibility with your training. It allows you to pick and choose when you want to fly and how much you pay as well, which is probably very important with such large sort of expenses involved in flying.
Right, okay, so is the course structure the same?
It's structured, it's still the same program, but you can do different modules at different stages. For example, you could do your CPL, you could then perhaps go back to work to earn some money, or you could carry straight on. It depends. You can gear it you can tailor the course to how you want to do it.
Right, and one of the guys that we had an email from said, how do you go about picking a school?
It's a difficult choice. It's a personal choice. I mean, of course, I would probably go for Bristol because that's where I am. But it's a case of looking around, doing a research, And I think most importantly is going to those schools and seeing how you feel, see if you feel comfortable, and yeah, looking at the packages they offer.
Is it just down to cost then, or is it just down to structure? Or?
Cost does come into it. I think that comes into for everybody. But looking at the structure of the course, looking at the aircraft, looking how many instructors, per student. These are all sort of questions you should be asking, and it's a case of going around to them and seeing how you feel, like I said.